Most bankers aren't ready to help you until after their third cup of coffee. But with Central National Bank's after-hours service, you don't have to wait for the bank lobby to open to get help. You can contact us from 6 to 8:30 in the morning or from 5 to 10 in the evening, and we'll connect you to a real, live, local person who can answer questions and fix problems 7 days a week. Bank different. Bank Central. Central National Bank. Member FDIC.
This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Bros and heroes. Gonna tell you about bros and heroes. Gonna tell you about
comic books, costumes, facts,
Boots!
and other stuff.
In this week's issue, Batman, whatever happened to the Caped Crusader?
Welcome into Bros, Foes, and Heroes. I'm Zach, joined, as always, by the masked vigilante himself, Mr. Mike.
Is that mass, M-A-S-S, or masked?
Masked.
Masked.
M-A-S-K-E-D.
I couldn't tell you the last time I wore a mask.
I'm trying to think now, too, when I did.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
It
when
had
you
to be
wear a
Halloween,
mask,
probably?
it's got to be on a Halloween,
And I can
right?
tell you then, I have not dressed up for anything that involved a mask since I was like 8.
I think the closest I come is that picture I've got of me with the eye patch.
Oh, well,
That's about as close
does
as
an
it
eye
gets.
patch count as a mask? Like
I think it counts as a mask when there's nothing wrong with your eye.
Okay, so that's the last
Is
time
that
you wore a
fair?
mask. No,
You
fair
know?
enough.
Yeah.
I also think that an eye patch can be the simplest Halloween costume
Oh, sure.
because either you just add that, or if you don't add it, or if you don't have any facial hair, you add an eye patch and you draw on a mustache.
Yeah.
And you're evil. Insert your name.
Yeah.
You're just the evil version
whatever.
of yourself.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
like Mike now
That's a good one.
is just Mike, but with the eye patch, he's
Eye
evil
patch.
Mike.
I'm evil Mike. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just easy. That's all you
Yeah.
got to do.
I love it.
Saved you for Halloween this
Well, it's
upcoming
kind
year.
of like Jim on The Office. You know,
Yeah.
he wrote the word book across his face.
And he's Facebook.
Yeah, he's Facebook.
I like that.
Funny stuff.
So a couple weeks back,
he wore 3 cutout holes and said he was 3-hole Jim, and it was
I forgot about that.
great.
But a couple weeks ago, we started and went through a series of Superman stories that don't suck. And one of those that we covered, or it was a couple stories, but it was one of the theme that we did was Alan Moore's Superman.
Yeah.
And one of the stories being in those was Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, which was kind of like the swan song or the final story for like the Silver Age Superman.
Right.
DC was relaunching all their continuity with Crisis on Infinite Earths there in 1986. And so Man of Steel was the new Superman title that was taking over and rebooting all of Superman. So it was kind of like the last kind of like farewell to the Superman they knew.
Yeah, sure.
Longtime editor at the time, I think it was a Jewish Schwartz.
Jeff
Schwartz?
Ederton.
Jeff
Ederman.
No, it
Editor
wasn't.
man.
Man, I'm blanking on the editor now. I think it was Jewish Schwartz. I don't remember. It was the guy. He had been the editor for Superman for a
Do
long
the
time.
editors really do that much?
I mean, yeah.
What do you think they do?
Way to put me on the spot, Mike.
Well, I'm just asking.
No. Like, so here, okay. So I've read a lot of books, and without me
Yeah.
working in there and telling you for sure this is what.
Sure.
What I get is that the editor at least kind of plans out the run as a sense. Like
Yeah.
what I've learned from reading things about different comic book writers and just histories and just interviews from them themselves is like, let's say you and I wanted to work together for a book for DC. I wanted to write it. You were going to be my artist, right?
Uh-huh.
We pitch, like we come up with this idea, or maybe it's I come up with the idea and I've written the script. I have this story we're going to talk about Batman today. I haven't got to it and I'll get into it a little bit more, but
Gotcha,
let's
sure.
say
Yeah.
probably I would have to do a lot to be able to pitch a Batman story to be able to get it, because they're not going to let just anybody kind of do a Batman story or a Superman story. You know, there's certain characters that you work up to. But let's say maybe I had somebody smaller, like I'm Tom King and I wanted to pitch like the Mr. Miracle book, or I wanted to do like Blue Beetle or something. I have a story, I pitch it to DC.
Mm-hmm.
DC approves it then. I write my story out and I, get it to you. I have to get approval on all of the story though that goes through. I have to get approval on the story as a whole, but also like what characters I use too. and how it fits in then I guess with like the rest of continuity and what's going on with the rest of the comic book story, because my story is just dealing with that one character.
Sure.
So I think, in my understanding, and again, I could be completely off, but the editor is kind of the one over that title as a whole. So if he was like the editor for, I picked somebody and I already forgot who it was, Blue Beetle. We're going to write a Blue Beetle book. He's the editor of Blue Beetle. Like, he's responsible of knowing like, all right, hey, 6 months from now, we're having this story with Blue Beetle and Booster Gold we got to get to. So what you're doing here has to make sure not to get away from that. Yeah. And hey, we're trying to bring, like, I think the editor just kind of is the overseer of the entire.
Like in movies, I guess it would be like a script supervisor, editor of like, and when I say editor, it's more of like proofreading and making sure that the story makes sense.
I don't know if it's necessarily proofreading.
Maybe last set of eyes.
Kind of, and I think it's the last set of eyes, but it's also like for that title, it's also the deciding factor, at least there, unless it's pushed more and you have to take it kind of further up.
Yeah.
Like if I were like, in our Blue Beetle story, I'm like, oh, Green Lantern's going to show up. Well, maybe the Green Lantern or the editor of this book knows Green Lantern's got something big going on. So he's like, you can't use Green Lantern. They're going to use something.
Arrow.
Oh, yeah. Well, you mean Green Arrow?
Sorry. Yeah.
He's got a new ring, whatever. So it's like, you can't use him.
That's what I don't like that.
No, I know
that they're both green, whatever.
Yeah, I get it.
Are they one of them Marvel?
No, they're both DC.
That's even stupider. Oh. Yeah,
okay. And he might be like, no, you can't use Green Lantern because of other things that are set up. And then maybe I can push back and be like, it's really important for the story to be told. And then maybe we go from there. But so that's what I view. So the editor of that Superman book at the time is the one. He also, since he's over that book, he usually chooses the writer and the author to work on that.
Yeah.
So he's the one. He wanted. We talked about it. Was it Jerry Siegel to write the last story because they created Superman, but DC Legal wouldn't let him do that. So he was like, "Okay, Alan Moore, you're writing the story." Like he got to pick who wrote it then.
Yeah.
So all that to say,
it'd be fun to get some of those folks on just to talk about the comic book industry in general.
That is one of my favorite things that I got to learn about when reading. Like I've read multiple books now at this point. There was Slugfest. I'm sorry, I can't remember authors' names, and I apologize right now. First name's Reed. I didn't remember that, but it's about the kind of commercial battle between Marvel and DC. I know we've talked about it before. I read Sean Howe's book on the history of Marvel Comics, which is just so, like, I love that stuff. I love the behind the scenes stuff. While the stories and the characters themselves are always really interesting to me, I love knowing that, the problems are not even problems, but the things behind the scenes that led to why things were done the way they were.
Yeah. Reed Tucker, by the way.
Reed Tucker.
Yeah, I looked it up while you were talking.
Both great books. There's also another one out there called All the Marvels. That's I can't remember that author, but he read through every single Marvel comic at the time to kind of like give you a bird's eye view of what's important about that comic. And then in between, like while he's giving you that, he's interjecting like the history behind like the writers and the stories going into making it too, and it's all really good.
No,
there's a lot of good stuff out there.
I
a lot of good
enjoy
stories.
that whole like how the sausage is made,
Muppet Show
kind of thing. Yeah, Muppet Show.
That's what I always think of. The Muppet Show is a show about making a show.
Oh yeah.
That's what I heard.
That makes sense.
Yeah. It's also very much so like the same way wrestling is in a way, or like there's other things that are just like pageantry, like the way it's presented. And I always just like, as you said, seeing the way the sausage is made. So
I don't want to see your sausage.
No, I just
see how it's made.
Yeah. Great show, by the way. I love watching how it's made.
Oh yeah. I didn't know where we were going.
Yeah, I know. That. So, okay. So we talk about all this to get to where we're going today, which is a spiritual successor in a way to Alan Moore's Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow. And it was 2009's Whatever Happened to the Caped Crusader, which spans over just 2 issues. It's an issue of Action Comics, or is it Detective Comics? And then an issue of Batman. But the thing that's cool about this is it is written by a writer who very much so loves him some Alan Moore, just like the rest of us do. But he is a writer who is very good in his own right. and a writer that you'll probably know for a lot of different things too. Maybe not think of Batman, but that's Neil Gaiman.
Oh, yeah.
Now, Sandman is the first thing that comes to mind, but there's so many American Gods. He's done a lot of great things, and he's written a lot of great comic book stories too, including this collection here that I found. Since it's just 2 issues, they also have some of his other early Batman stories collected in the back of this, which is kind of cool, from like back in the 80s to kind of see like early Gaiman writing there for DC. But just a great writer in his own regards. And it's a story that I really enjoyed, and one that I just kind of wanted to talk about. It should be a quicker episode today, just 2 issues here. But I like the way that he kind of broached this topic. In an odd way, it reminds me of did you ever watch Batman the Animated Series? I know that it's past
Not
your
much.
time.
Yeah,
I know that, like, I was a kid when it came on, so
Yeah,
I watched
sure,
it all the
sure.
time.
I remember that.
And even as an adult now and being super nerdy, like sometimes I'll just like put it on in the background to work, and it's like that nostalgia.
I think
kind
if
of
I
thing.
were 15 years younger, that stuff would have hit me
Yeah.
pretty hard.
Well,
yeah.
and it's another thing though that
I was watching a lot of Barney and stuff like that at that time.
what was around this.
My children's.
Yeah, no, I get that.
Yeah.
But like there's things, that's another thing that I dove into more about, like the backstory
Barney?
of the animated series of Batman. And when you learn more about that, like I'm just so enthralled by that, because they were so like they never did an origin story because they thought it was overdone.
Yeah,
like
the origin stories are
they
overdone.
did something different at the time. Like you'll appreciate this, and I might have told you before, as animation, like everything animation time or at the time was done on a white background, right?
Okay.
Everything on that is done in black to make it look darker and to look more like brooding
On the
purpose.
Batman?
Yeah, all the like the cells, it's black cells.
Yeah.
The animation's done
Huh.
on. The Art Deco style, it's just
Yeah.
great. I love all of it still, but
The only thing I didn't like about those shows at that time
Mm-hmm.
is, yes, they would give it a stylistic feel, but the animation wasn't like, if you took 10 animation cells to get a guy to walk from one side of the room to the other, then it feels like the animation that they did for TV would only take 5.
Mhm.
You know, because it was a little choppier, it's a little cheaper, I would imagine. I can't even fathom, like, if they were given real money to do it today on, say, like Max or something like
dude.
that. Oh, it'd be a great show.
it would.
I'd watch that in a
still,
heartbeat.
and I still go back and watch it, and I still say it's great.
It's almost like they could do an anime version without the giant eyes. You know, like if
They,
you
well,
had
I mean, they
that
kind of do now
they?
with like, I mean, the
animated
animated movies are kind of like
movies.
that.
Hey, the animation still just doesn't look
I
super
don't know.
impressive.
I don't know.
to
I
me,
will
but,
see.
yeah.
I enjoyed it, and I'll say that I know for a fact that like the popularity of it at the time, they even started working on.
Oh, it was a big deal.
It is, but
Yeah.
my favorite, and I've said this before, and I'll hang on to this. My favorite Batman movie is still Mask of the Phantasm, which is the animated movie.
Mhm.
Second might be the newest one with Robert Pattinson, but like it's just done. It was the height of its popularity, and they told them to start working on a movie. And they built. I love this story too. They built. If you watch the opening sequence of, it's very kind of. You have a lot of CGI and stuff done for kind of the first time.
Sure.
And they had a smaller budget, but they wanted to make the opening sequence at least feel a little different and special because they were making a longer like episode. They hadn't given them the money to do that.
Right.
They show the open, if I remember this correctly, to like Warner Brothers executives who were blown away by it. And they're like, no, you're getting a theater run for this.
Oh,
like
wow.
off of that.
Yeah.
So then like, it's one of the only movies that they took like a cropped version already and had to make out into widescreen to
That's
make
cool.
it fit, because they decided to do the theatrical run after they had already almost finished the movie, which is interesting too.
Very nice.
But I digress. Let's get into our story today by Neil Gaiman, art by Andy Kubert, who was also doing the Batman run with Grant Morrison at the time. But it is Batman, Whatever Happened to the Caped Crusader.
I like this.
The art on this, I read in the sketchbooks there.
Yeah.
Because there's some of the sketches that we'll
It
get
looks
to.
like it was a very tiny thing and they blew it up real big, but it suits what you're looking at. I mean, it feels grimy and kind of
It does.
disjointed.
But they talked a lot that they wanted there to be a kind of paying homage. There we go. Homage. Thank you. To the like older styles of Batman. So like he had like Andy Kubert draws Batman to look like
I loved his
Dick
game
Springs.
where you jump around on the block.
But draws like Batman to look like Dick Springs Batman in one panel, and draws him to look like Neil Adams Batman in one panel. Like they purposely like make them look like
That's really
some of
cool.
the artists used to.
Yeah, that's very
There's
cool.
little tidbits and stuff that are nice. Like I'll show you when we get there. So
Because I would imagine those artists didn't get a lot of breaks, and certainly didn't get a lot of recognition.
No, and it's like
so anytime you can pay homage to their style and stuff like
here,
that,
let
I'm
me
sure it's a
find-
huge deal.
I'll go ahead and get to one of the because it talks about it itself when it gets to some of the character sketches here. Like it
I
has
just
a
love
very
these pencil sketches.
I do.
And stuff,
It has a very 40s feel to it, and it says like
very much so.
writer Neil Gaiman asked Andy to design the Joker based on the version of the character by legendary artist Jerry Robinson, who first drew like. That's what Joker looked like in his first appearance.
Yeah.
Like they're purposely.
He looks like Bela Lugosi could have played him.
He does. Well, it's from, the idea is they got it from the Laughing Man? What's that? The 1927 movie. The Man Who Laughs. If you go back, like it's based kind of
I
after
remember
that look.
hearing that, yeah.
But then like they based
They
Penguin.
can keep Batmite though. That's fine. Keep that. I'm good.
But then like they made sure that Penguin looks like Jack Burnley's Penguin when he drew it.
Who's the lady here?
That is Selena Kyle.
Okay. Yeah, that is definitely a 40s looking outfit, hairdo, the whole thing.
So-
Even the look on her face is like very 40s.
And that's what they have.
This is gorgeous right
dude,
here.
all the art, like just the thing, the whole thing in general, I enjoyed a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm not giving too much away to it. I kind of told Mike what it is, but we'll break into it right now because I love the concept here. I brought up the animated series because I was gonna say if you've seen it, this will give you a little bit of a teaser before we get into it.
This does remind me of it, like the Batman cowl being up over everybody like that, because I remember seeing that a lot
with
the animated series. Yeah.
But there's an episode called Almost Got Him, which is one of my favorite episodes. And it's where all the villains are playing poker, like at this kind of seedy bar.
Yeah.
And each one tells a different story of how they almost caught Batman. But in the end, he like always gets away. Like they're always trying to one up each other. It's like, yeah, but I did this. And it gets to the end and they're like, oh, and so where is he?
Sure.
And none of them are still able to catch him kind of. But it's a great episode. And you'll see kind of what I mean when I get into here. But let's go ahead and break into our story of whatever happened to the Caped Crusader, starting with Batman 686. And we get the Gotham skyline. And we see cars driving in. I told you little things that I noticed. We see a billboard over to the right where it says, don't type it, finger it. Bill Finger was a guy who helped create Batman who never got a lot of credit either.
Yeah.
I like to think that's a nice little kind of
it's cool.
homage in there as well. But we see this car kind of pull up down Crime Alley, which is very significant in Batman lore.
I'm thinking if you rename that alley, maybe you don't have so much crime.
Like maybe if it's Happy
I mean,
Alley.
you're going ahead and accepting that there's going to be crime in this alley.
You think that's all it was? All it needed was a name change?
That's it. You change the name, you change the fate.
All right.
That's from a movie, I think.
Maybe. Sounds like it should be.
If not, it will be.
So a nice looking little, I don't know what kind of car, but it has a cat's head on the front of it, kind of pulls up into this alley, and we see a woman get out. And it's the same woman I showed you before, dressed in her little 40s garb because it's Miss Selena Kyle. And as she gets out, there's a guy there kind of dressed with a bowler hat and a suit. And he's like, hey, this is a dangerous place. Want me to watch your car for you?
If I didn't know better, he looks like Alfred, kind of.
He kind of
does.
Younger,
And
she's like, she's like, no, I've got it. That's okay. I have somebody else to watch it for me.
Yeah.
And he's like, what do you mean? And it turns back around and there's cats kind of all over her car. And she's like, as I said, I got it covered already. And she kind of walks in. She goes and walks to the bartender that's there. And it's this very ugly, just dive looking bar. And there's nobody in there. And as she walks in, the guy behind is just kind of cleaning glasses.
Bartender?
Yeah, bartender. Thank you. And I forgot what he was for a second. And he goes,
Shineman.
And Selena Kyle goes, I'm here for, and the bartender cuts her off and goes, it's in the back room. And she goes, am I early? And he's like, no, Miss Kyle, they're all just arriving. But now if you head back, you can't miss it. She goes to walk back, and we don't know what she's there for. But as she goes, she stops and she looks at the bartender. She goes, it's Joe, right? And the bartender goes, yes, ma'am. Joe Chill, which, if you know anything about Batman, is the guy who killed Batman's parents.
Yeah.
And he goes, didn't think you'd remember that. And she goes, well, are you going to be joining us, Joe? And Joe tells her, like, no, I can't. Somebody's got to sit up here and watch the bar.
It's not really a name you forget either.
Joe Chill. Yeah. And he's like, no, somebody's got to watch the bar, kind of tell people where to go.
Sure.
And she walks by to head back, and she stops, and she kind of turns to look at him again and kind of is like confused for a bit. And she goes, I thought that I heard that you were dead, Joe. Like, you have to think, like, if he killed Batman's parents, like when, you know.
Yeah.
And he goes, I was here at the start of it all, Miss Kyle. I'm not going to miss the end. And she just kind of walks off.
But he never addresses whether he's actually dead or alive.
No, and he just kind of like, okay. And she just walks past. And then we see like these blue text panels that's somebody talking that's not in the room.
Yeah.
And we get that man, that's Joe Chill. And you get another gray panel. So it's two people who aren't in the room. To which the second voice just shushes him. And the blue voice says, but she's right. He's dead.
Yeah.
And as she walks into a room, we see that it looks like it's this just awful kind of makeshift funeral.
Yeah.
There's
it's rough.
Yeah, there's holes in the wall, plaster's falling off.
Yeah.
There's like just these
Leak
raggedy
spots.
chairs.
Yeah.
It's the worst looking casket you've ever seen.
Yeah.
Like, it's just nothing.
Well, it's just wood.
It is.
It's just like it's like the cheapest one you can
Exactly.
get.
It's nothing very eventful whatsoever.
Yeah.
And so she gets there and Alfred greets her and he's like, hey, Miss Kyle, you'll be on the left side of the room here. And she like thanks him and he goes, we have food if you, and she's like, I'm not hungry. And he's like, would you like to,
your fancy feast, madame.
And Alfred goes, would you like to, and Selena goes, make sure that he's really dead. And he goes, that wasn't what I was going to say, Miss Kyle, but, and she just stops and goes, I'll cry, Alfred, smudge my makeup. I'll disgrace myself. I don't want to do that. And he's like, he always thought you highly of you, miss. And about that time, we zoom out as she says, well, things certainly are different now. We see in the casket is Batman.
Yeah.
So we see his mask sitting there, and we are now at the funeral of Batman, which they open.
It is odd that he's in his whole suit.
It is. But you kind of also have to think that in a weird way, if criminals were showing up, like, that's kind of what I like about this is it's a wake where, and you'll see like everybody shows up.
Yeah, sure.
Which is part of why I like this because we have the voices, which we figure out the blue voice has to be Batman because he says, but that's me as he's looking down on himself. So what happens then is we start to see other people start to arrive. There's a car that pulls up that one side is pristine. The other side is beat to hell.
It's
as
Two-Face.
Two-Face gets out and flips, and the guy asks him about watching his car. And he's like, here's what I'll tell you. I'll flip it. Heads, I'll pay you $1 to watch my car. Tails, I'll kill you. And hopefully you don't get any of your, blood on my car and I have to clean it again. And the guy's just kind of scared as Two-Face flips the coin and he, kind of slaps it on his hand, kind of looks at it and just gives him $1. And he goes, make sure nobody, like scratches it. As the kid just kind of like gulps. Like you're just, we're introducing just kind of these different personalities that are obviously, Batman's Rogues Gallery. Also, while we're there, Jim Gordon shows up, Commissioner Gordon, with Barbara as he's pushing her in her wheelchair. And they're like, I guess, I always knew that it was going to kind of be like this, that we didn't have him forever. I just didn't know, or that one day someone would say, hey, Jim, whatever happened to the Caped Crusader? I'd tell them pretty much what you expect. He died, or he's dead. I just didn't think it would be today, is what he says as he pushes her in. And you can tell that Barbara's just still kind of upset. Everybody's trying to grasp in their own way what's going on. Here's some other little things that I noticed. Riddler there. Who does he look like?
Eminem. I don't know. Who does he look like? Does he look like the one from the 60s?
Yeah, from Frank Gorsh.
Frank Gershwin. Frank Gorsham.
Well, I thought it was Frank Gorsh. Anyway, it looks like the Riddler from the Batman TV show from '66 with Adam West.
Okay. Well, that's what I was going to say, but then I looked at it and I
think
thought,
it's Frank. Man, it's still. But like there's little things like that where characters will look like, it's nice little like just kind of throwbacks to certain things in Batman's past.
Yeah.
We then get a car pulls up that has a Joker face on the front of it. So you obviously know it's got to be the Joker. And as he gets out, I really like this.
Frank Gorshin. Gorshin.
Sorry. So it does very much look like.
Picture of him.
It looks very much like Frank Gorshin there.
Yeah.
And the Joker gets out of the car, and I really like this. I don't think I'm the only one who does this. I can only read the Joker when he's in here in Mark Hamill's voice. That's how I read it. And so this fit this very much with the Mark Hamill voice when I did it. But he gets out of the car and he tells the kid, "Hey kid, watch my car for me." And the kid is nervous and he's like, and he's like, "For heaven's sakes, kid, it's a rough neighborhood. Just watch my car. Can you keep an eye on it?"
Yeah, sure.
Is that so hard? And he's like, but you're the Joker. And he's like, "Well, yeah, obviously." And he goes, "You'll kill me." He's like, "Why would I kill you? I wanted my car looked after or he goes, "I want my car looked after. $20? He's like, I don't think so. $20? But you'll kill me." He's like, "Kid, I'm the Joker. I don't randomly kill people. I kill people when it's funny. What would conceivably be funny about killing you?"
Yeah.
And it's just a very just matter of fact kind of like, and it's funny because he just walks by to leave and the kid is still just so like,
oh yeah,
it's
you'd
the
be shook
Joker.
up. Yeah.
So he's just like sitting there shaking as like Ra's al Ghul and other villains are just passing by him.
Yeah.
And he's just sitting there go, if I leave it and I don't watch his car, he'll kill me. But if something does happen to it, like he's just sitting there and it's just a really funny kind of moment there. But the whole room is filling up. You got Harvey Bullock, who's a detective on the force, Renee Montoya, who later becomes the Question. You kind of see a bit of Harley Quinn there, the old school Harley Quinn.
Red and black suit.
Purposely, we talked. Here's the thing I talked about. This looks like Joker from the 40s.
Yeah.
This is Joker from the animated series
Oh yeah, I
with
see
the Harley
head.
Quinn.
Yeah, I see the
With
head.
the like, they do little things like that. Same with the two. Like Mad Hatter kind of looks like that too. Like there's,
Yeah.
I just love the art in this and the different things. But what we get here then for whatever happened to the Caped Crusader is essentially kind of like we got in the Almost Got Him, is a bunch of people telling tales about how Batman died.
Yeah.
And each one just kind of showcases different aspects of the Batman character. So the first one we get is the Catwoman's tale. And they draw her very much how she first appeared back in the 30s and 40s, which is she had a cat mask that she wore like that.
Oh,
on her
okay.
head. So that's why it's like that.
I had no idea.
Yeah. So you might be like, why does she have a cat mask? Well, it's because that's how Catwoman was originally drawn.
Okay.
So everything stays the same.
I don't like that.
I know,
I
but
don't want that.
but the story stays the same in a sense of she was a cat burglar.
Yeah.
Cat burglar, stealing jewelry, stuff like that.
A little on the nose, lady.
A little bit. Batman catches her. They have their kind of tit for tat back and forth, like a lot of Batman, Catwoman stories.
Yeah.
And the two of them, they also then move her costume to what it turned into afterwards
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
But
The purple with the small ears.
in the purple cape, but like Batman would arrest her and then she'd get caught again and he'd chase. It was the cat and mouse thing. And eventually, you know, she kind of fell in love with him. The two fell for one another. You've seen it before. It's Batman and Catwoman stories.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But it's just, it makes sense of like that little romance bit between them.
Absolutely.
But they kind of share moments where she feels like she cares for him a lot and she thinks that he does too, but that he'll never care for her until the city's taken care of, right?
Yeah.
Like he loves the city more than anything.
Sure.
So he's got to protect it. But if there's no city to protect, then he can love her fully, kind of thing. So she decides, I'm not going to do bad anymore and I'm going to help get these criminals out of town. But the way she goes about doing it is she like holds them at gunpoint and she threatens them.
That poor girl, she's flip-flopped so many times.
She has. And she like shows up at the Iceberg Lounge to tell Penguin, like, cats eat birds. Either you get out of Gotham or I'm coming for you. Like she's trying to get everybody out to make Gotham better. Then though, as she's doing this, Batman still comes and catches her and tells her that she can't keep administering justice like this.
Yeah.
And she's like, and you can? Like, I'm doing a better job of cleaning the city than you ever did. And he's like, not like this. Like how you're doing it's wrong. That's not how we do it.
Yeah.
And she's like, but because I'm one of the bad guys, like I can't do what you're doing. And he's like, guess the fact that I care for you isn't worth the hill of beans in your world, is it? I love that he used some of like that old 40s.
Yeah, hill of beans.
Yeah. Kind of when writing this too, because it has that feel of being trapped in there. And I like that.
This is a very specific title for a store.
Kyle's Quality Cats and Kittens.
Yeah, it's just cats and kittens.
Yeah.
That's all.
But it says that he left there.
Biggest litter box
And
in
she
town.
never saw him like again for a long time.
Sure.
She opened up the cat store, the pet store she always talked about. I don't know. Where she like it says bred Persians and Siamese and Burmese cats and sold them to rich society, like uppity people.
Yeah.
Found some homes for some stray kittens, kind of did all that. And I just kind of lived my life and I forgot about them. Like it says, I like this. It says, pretty soon the kid joined him. I worried. I thought I didn't care. I thought it was over, is what she says.
She's talking about Robin?
About Robin.
Yeah.
So she's like, I quit worrying about Batman.
Yeah, sure.
And then one night you see her like fixing her signage outside the pet store. And we see just Selena ?
Yeah.
And she's shocked to see who it is. And it's Batman bleeding out. And she goes, what happened? What's wrong? And he goes, I was overconfident. A kid in the alley, his first stick up the gun, it went off in his hand. I remembered you were here. Help me. And then she just says, blood, that's blood, as he's just like, oozing out everywhere. We cut back. It's like, it's a black panel and it's like him coming to, and he's looking Catwoman. I guess I could just use it. And he's looking Catwoman in the face and he's just kind of like, where am I? And she's like, you tied me up. And she's like, yeah, you've lost a lot of blood. Too much blood. And he's like, but why? Like, I came to you because I thought that you were nearby and I could trust you. Why?
Yeah.
And she says, no, you came here because you love me, and I let you die because I love you. And he's just like, you could get me to a hospital, call a doctor. It's not too late. And she goes, it was always too late. And she just leaves him there to bleed out on her sofa.
Wow.
Because he's like, so much to do, as he just kind of fades out with his eyes open. And she goes and she closes them for him. And she goes, I thought I was going to end it all afterwards, but I didn't. I came here, and that's all. And that's
girl.
Catwoman's story.
I'm just saying she has tried so many times to get out of being a bad guy. And look at this. She's got her own life going on. She's forgetting about him. And then here he comes again, like a freaking bad penny.
And to bring her back in. But she did let him die.
Yeah, well, I don't know that I wouldn't either.
Because here's the thing. Is like,
tired of this.
There's a lot of things in here, like when I get to that I read that it's so... The writing to me in this was just so good that I would read the lines and I would be like, damn, after I got done. And that was the first one. When I got to it and that happened, I was like, oh, this is the kind of book we're in for. Okay, I like this.
Yeah.
Because after she kind of runs away, Selena's running away crying, we get some text from Batman, who's dead or maybe not, that goes, it's so familiar, but that was the death of Robin Hood, not mine.
Robin Hood.
That's what he says. Yeah. And then the Gray says, no, it was your death. Or at least it was Batman's. And then we see Batman again, but Alfred, that's Alfred. And then Alfred starts to tell his story, which is the gentleman's tale. Alfred tells the story of how he was still, I'm assuming, kind of back overseas in the UK, working as part of like a traveling actors troupe, right? They put on all these different shows together. He and his group of friends, it seems to be like 3 other dudes and a woman, as they're acting things out, and they just loved being on the road, and they were so great at it all. But Alfred's father kind of tells him like, hey, he finds out that he's been diagnosed with cancer and that it's time for him to return to the family. And by return to the family, they mean go back home to Gotham.
Oh, I see.
So by the time
so his family is in Gotham?
His dad was the butler for the Waynes. It's like
Oh, I see. Okay. All right.
So
that makes sense.
So he's going back to kind of take over for his dad. By the time he gets back to Gotham, his dad has already passed away.
I didn't know much about his story. Like I didn't watch Pennyworth, that thing that was on.
Well, I don't know how much this is. I'll be honest with you. I don't know how much this is. Like I know like some canon. Of. Yeah. I think this. Well, I can tell you this story. Well, you'll see.
Okay.
So it talks about how he, Thomas Wayne, Bruce's dad, looked after Alfred's father in his last couple of days and took care of him really well. And
sure.
Then he took over and was the butler for the Waynes, and how much he loved like watching Miss Wayne playing with little Bruce and reading to him. And it was just so happy to see the two of them like that. Yeah. And then it was just so great. And then that night in the alley, and that how, everything just kind of turned after his parents died.
Right.
And he talks about how Master Bruce was in shock for a long time. Like he wouldn't talk for months. All he did was just work out, dedicating himself to like, I got to be able to help this city. And then it says, the years flew by. I was there the first time he rode out as a masked vigilante, and I found him when he fell and sewed up his wounds, because it shows him like leaving and falling out like a crash, a motorcycle accident, and Alfred following him in a car to go and pick him up.
I like this compressed version of the origin.
I like this too.
Yeah.
Well, this story, Alfred's story, is very clever. To me,
Okay.
we'll get to
All
it. And he goes, and then he began, like Alfred's telling, he goes, and then he began dressing like a bat. As an Englishman, I find it difficult to identify the place that eccentricity ends and madness begins. That Master Bruce was eccentric, I do not deny. And I admit that it's not normal to dress as a giant bat and fight crime.
It's not. Yeah.
But it says that, but by doing it, like he was happier, like the black moods left, like he smiled more. He felt like he was doing good. So like I embellished him in it with it. Like it's bringing him happiness.
I mean, yeah. How do you not?
Right.
Yeah.
And then it says, and then the smile began to fade. He still went out at night. Sometimes he found criminals in the act of committing crimes and stopped them. Mostly he did not. And he goes, he was moved away from me, away from the world, and the black was taking over again. Did I do what I believe, or did I do right? I believed so at the time. Because what you see is Batman, who obviously can't deal.
He looks rough.
He looks rough.
Mm-hmm.
I do love that he goes out and he finds crime and he tries to stop it, but he can't.
I like the fact that he's got the black around his eyes.
He does for the countdown.
Yeah.
So then it says
that I've always felt like is such a good like detail for them to include.
Well, they did it with Robert Pattinson. And I like that too.
Anytime you don't do that, I'm like, is that a magic mask? What's happening there?
Yeah. Then Alfred goes, an old friend of mine from the theatrical troupe was passing through town, and he meets with him at a bar, and his friend's telling him like, man, I can't act anymore, Alfie. I just get too deep into the part. Acting just kind of made me crazy. So now, when my wife left, I just switched to comedy, nightclubs, man. But you got to make a living some way. I guess I'll just do it as a comic.
It's a living.
And Alfred looks at him and goes, Eddie, since you're having trouble, like, I got a favor to ask of you then. And he goes, yeah, what? Sure, name it. And Alfred goes, I need something to intrigue Master Bruce. Something crime related. I was thinking about a riddle. Would you deliver them?
Is that the guy?
So he goes, yeah, you want me to be a master criminal, one that tells riddles? And Alfred tells him, well, if you're willing to. And he kind of quotes some Shakespeare. I can't remember what. He makes up like a riddle that he gives to him. And Alfred goes, I'll work on the material. Like, don't worry about the riddles. I've got it.
It's not great.
So it says the riddles were my idea and the costume was his. And if you look, there's the Riddler dressed now.
Oh, yeah.
And like his old, the comic Riddler costume.
The original, like the good one.
And he goes, remarkable. And Alfred's friend Eddie says, I'll be the riddle master. We'll challenge this Batman to a duel. And Alfred goes, Riddler. I think that's going to be more memorable. Like he tells him that's what he does. And then it says, Master Bruce was a new man. And when the black mood came upon him, I would call in friends and it would help for a while. It helped, but it did not help enough. And we get different people. He is using people from his theater troupe to be Batman's rogues gallery. So in this story, Bruce Wayne was not able to become the Batman he was.
Yeah.
Like he turned into Batman, but he's he's emotionally too crippled to fight crime.
Yeah.
So Alfred is hiring his theater buddies to pretend to be all these villains to give him somebody to fight to help like that mood, because he knows Batman's not going to kill. Batman's not,
Yeah.
So
why is there a giant penny and a dinosaur back there?
That's always
in the cave.
It's like tokens that Batman's kept. It's kind of back from, remember how like Superman keeps trophies in the Fortress of Solitude?
Okay.
Batman would do the same thing in the Batcave.
All right. So he kept a dinosaur.
But then he did. It's a giant mechanical one.
Oh, okay.
But then he goes, it helped, but it did not help enough. And it says, what Master Bruce needed was a Moby Dick for his Ahab, a Moriarty for his Holmes.
Yeah.
And so, regrettably, I did what needed to be done. White grease paint, red lipstick,
Joker?
a purple suit, a green wig, and it did nothing until I smiled. And I love the way that they put the whole thing together.
This doesn't make, anyway, yeah.
I'm
waiting, yeah.
No,
I'm just saying there's no way Batman fights this guy and doesn't realize it's freaking Alfred.
So it says, those were the glory days. And I love this. We talk about like the Neil Adams Batman and stuff.
Yeah.
They take old like Batman panels from there and they like reanimate them in there to like show the battles they've had. And he goes, Master Bruce came out of his shell. The game continued. Once or twice a month was enough to keep him interested, awake, and alive. Like Alfred to himself is doing this to make sure that Bruce is,
Yeah. I get it.
Yeah.
This takes any and all power that Bruce Wayne or that Batman ever had away from him.
It does, though.
Yeah.
But nothing good lasts forever. And even in his folly, he was a remarkable detective. And it shows, Alfred walks in and goes, "You rang, sir?" And Bruce goes, "Yes, Alfred. I was hoping you could explain these." And it shows the grease paint and the wig.
Oh, yeah.
And Alfred goes, "Halloween, sir. I plan to go trick-or-treating." And Bruce kind of tells him, "You don't have to lie to me anymore. Your friend, Ozzy Chesterfield, your penguin," is what he tells him. He goes, "Let me know about the whole thing. I know about your troop. I know too much." And he goes, "And you're the Joker? Like you were always the Joker? Like why, Alfred?" And he goes, "Because you needed it, sir," is kind of what he tells him. And he's like, "You're saying that all of this has just been a lie. Everything I've done is a lie." And he goes, "No, not at all, sir. If you believed that you were fighting evil, then you were indeed fighting evil," is what he tells him. And he's like, Batman, all of it, it's just been a huge joke then, hasn't it? It's kind of what he tells him. And Alfred's like, I would not have put it like that, sir, but perhaps it might be best to let it end now. Yeah. Like he's just telling me, maybe we do it. And he goes, "Alfred, it doesn't end. Even if there never was a Batman, I'm still Batman. Even if all the evil I fought was a lie, I don't have a choice. I have to keep fighting." And you see the back signal kind of show up in the background there while he's talking to him.
So did he? Well, okay.
So he's like,
"I'll wait."
But it was all lies, Master Bruce. And he's like, for me, maybe. But what if it's all real? Like somewhere the joke is worse and it's not just on me, but it's on everybody. Like there is actual evil out there now that we've done.
Right.
And he's like, "No, sir, I don't believe that Batman," or he goes, "and that Batman would do, like he'd have to, if that were real, like Batman would have to fight, right?" And he's like, "Yeah, I don't think Batman would ever lay down and die." And he's like, "Okay." And like he opens the like windows like he's going to go out because he sees the bat signal. And Alfred's like, "Master Bruce, where are you going?" He goes, "Out on night patrol. Look." He goes, "Did you tell him to turn it on?" Is kind of what he tells him. And he's like, "No, I didn't." And he goes, "It's on, Alfred. Batman's needed." And he walks out there like he's leaving. And Alfred just covers his face like, of course he is. Like, why won't he let this go? So we get to Batman shows up at the zoo, at the Gotham Zoo. And all the cops are there, Commissioner, and he's like, "What's the problem?" And like, "The Riddler, he's taking hostages and he only wants to talk to you. Like he's been calling for you." And Batman just goes, "It's not the Riddler. It's just some nightclub comedian named Eddie Nash. He used to be an actor." And like, he's like, Batman's just kind of defeated. Yeah. And he's just like,
"Well, I would be too. I mean, you basically pulled the entire rug out from under me."
And he's like, "I got it.
Eddie. I thought I was a thing and I'm not really a thing."
And he's like, "Eddie." And he jumps over like the enclosure with the drafts and goes to where Eddie or the Riddler is with this family. And he walks up to him and he goes, "I know about the game, Eddie. It's over. You can stop now." And the Riddler looks at him and goes, "I'm not Eddie Nash. Eddie Nash went away. I'm the Riddler." And Batman walks closer and he goes, "Eddie, give me the gun." And he's like, "I'm the goddamn Riddler. I'm not crazy." Like he's crazy. We learned earlier that where he talked about he gets too into his parts.
Yeah, he's gone nuts.
He has. And so he's like, "Watch dresses in green," has a big black question mark on his chest, and it's going to kill the Batman right now as he's like pointing his gun, like shaking it at him.
That's a really lazy Riddler.
It is. And he was never good at riddles.
I'm just kidding.
And Batman goes, "Put the gun down, Eddie." And he like sits there and he grabs his hand from it.
Yeah.
And we just get the look on Batman's face and a giant blam as Batman just falls back. And the Riddler goes, "Did I do that?" Like he can't know what he did. And as we're sitting there, Alfred goes, "They took Eddie Nash to the madhouse, the real one, not Arkham," making it where like even Arkham. Yeah. And he goes, "And I brought Master Bruce here." And Batman's voice goes, "That's ridiculous. Do you know how much of that story is impossible?" He's like, "Alfred couldn't have been the Joker. I mean, I can see the Joker sitting right there, like in the panel there." And our Batman goes, "Am I dead?" And the voice next to him goes, "Not yet." And then he looks and you can see it's a silhouette of a woman. We see shadows kind of standing over the casket. And Batman goes, "Are you Death?" And the woman goes, "I don't think Death is a person, Bruce." To which Batman replies, "Then tell me, who are you?" And she replies, "You're the world's greatest detective, Bruce. Why don't you figure it out?" And that is where we end part 1 of whatever happened to the Caped Crusader. We'll take a quick break and come back to close out our story right after this. All right, and welcome back into Bros, Foes, and Heroes with part 2 of Whatever Happened to the Caped Crusader by Neil Gaiman and Andy Kubert. I hope I'm saying that right. I'm assuming it's Kubert. Great art throughout the whole thing. And I love, we open up the second issue, or the second part of this took place in Detective Comics 853 at the time. But I love how we get like the funeral page of everybody out there. Yeah, there's Poison Ivy, there's Azrael. There, like, you can just see like Two-Face.
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
Ra's al Ghul. Like, you see like all Huntress, even some like random, like that looks like a Three Musketeer with a mask on. Like, and I'm sure, I can't think of who it is, but I'm sure it's some like Batman
it's
villain.
A reference to some Batman villain either on the TV show or in the comics or whatever. Yeah.
And so I just kind of love that it's like everybody's there. There's Mr. Freeze.
Big swashbuckling guy like that. I think probably 60s show.
Probably.
You know?
But I kind of love, like, you know, everybody that's there meeting to kind of pay respects, and they just kind of walk up. They say Commissioner, I don't know. I think it looks like Commissioner Gordon. They're walking up, they're telling their story, and they're going, they're sent back down, and it's one after the other. Everybody has a story to say about Batman.
Yeah, sure.
And it's not just like we saw. It's not just like somebody like Selena Kyle who has a interesting relationship with Batman, or somebody like Alfred who has been. Both of those are characters that are closely tied to him.
Sure.
It's people like Poison Ivy. It's even people like Azrael, who's Jean-Paul Valley, who like just took over for Batman for a little bit. It's not the characters that are as close, but everybody, or even like his rivals, everybody has something to say.
I love how in each one of these panels, it's a different Batman.
That's true too. They all look like a different Batman from at the time.
Yeah.
I can tell you that Batman
the giant ears
looks like Kelly Jones's Batman from Batman Dracula, which is sitting on our table in there, and I'll show you when we're done.
All right.
Like that Batman to me kind of looks like Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns Batman.
Square jaw.
Yeah, so it's like each one looks like a different creator's Batman,
that
which is really cool too.
It looks like the one from the TV show.
It does.
Yeah.
And
well, I guess
really
not, because
cool.
he was more blue.
He was, but still, like it's.
I don't know. I love the fact, that they're paying homage to
so
all
much.
the different Batmans.
And that's what I think I love about this too, is the story. Once we get to it a little bit, might have once I explain the later part of it here, you might be like, that's fine. Yeah. But everything else about it as a whole, I just think it's so good, and it's so well done.
Kind of a love letter.
It does.
To everybody who's worked on Batman before.
And it seems like the people who worked on this really cared about it. So like that makes me like a lot more.
Yeah.
You can just feel it.
Yeah.
So we get Batman kind of telling, he's like, I seem to be attending my own funeral. It's kind of how he opens as he's looking out on this. And he goes, and they're telling stories, each of them about me, like Poison Ivy, Commissioner Gordon, Kirk Langstrom, who's Man-Bat he brings up. He's like, and each of them tells like a different story about a different death. He's like trying to figure this all out. He's like, it's kind of like a dream, but I'm not alone. Like, there's this woman here who talks to me. She says I'm not dead, but like, I don't know if I believe her or not. Then we get, I'm pretty sure this is the first Huntress here.
This was told over a series of 2 comics?
This is told over a series of 2 comics.
Okay.
And there's a Huntress who is standing in front of, I'm pretty sure that is.
Yeah.
In front of Batman's casket. And she goes, I said, there's nothing you can do. Nothing anyone can do. And she's like, if you take your hand off the lever of that bomb, it blows right now. And if you don't, and if you don't, then it's going to blow in a minute or so and take half of Gotham with it. There's nothing we can do. And he looks at her and goes, there's always something you can do. And she goes, and he held the bomb tight as a man holding a child, or never letting go. And he just kind of dove into the Gotham harbor to die. And she goes, like he said, there's always something you can do.
This is Mad Hatter.
That's
here,
Mad
right?
Hatter.
Yeah.
So Huntress says Batman died, like sacrificing himself to save Gotham. Mad Hatter, I don't know why, I kind of like this one. This is what I'm thinking. Oh, yeah. Mad Hatter goes, you can't just keep fighting, I told him. I told him that. I said, look, we've done it. We've won. You're dead. And he looked at me with those Vorpal white eyes, and he said, yeah, which is a nice word. And he said, I don't quit. It's not over. It's never over. And he just goes, that was the last thing he said. I don't know why I let it trouble me so much. But it's just like, even his villains at the time are like kind of respecting his moxie in a way.
Moxie. Look at you. Yeah.
Well, it fits with I really like this Joker panel too.
You ever had any Moxie?
Like the drink?
The gum.
Was it gum?
There's a gum.
I thought it was like a soda.
I think there might have been a Moxie soda. Well, maybe it was soda. I don't know. Yeah.
I feel like there was a Moxie soda.
I think if you go to a Cracker Barrel anywhere in this great country,
they'll
you'll
have
find
the
it.
Moxie for sure. That does seem like a Cracker Barrel kind of thing.
Yeah.
Then we get Joker telling a story.
Cracker Barrel.
And
Hey, everybody, there's a train.
there's a train that's going to join us for a little bit here as we talk.
That's all right.
But then we get the Joker panel, and he goes, and I screamed, "Smile, damn you! Why don't you smile? Like I've put enough Joker venom in you to to finish off a regiment of elephants. Why won't you smile? Why won't you die?" And he's holding like this giant needle,
Giant
in typical
syringe.
Joker
Yeah.
style. And Batman just looks at him and goes, "Because it's not funny." And then we see the Joker panel goes, and after much too long, he went down. He died, but he still didn't smile. And he was right. It wasn't funny, but it should have been. Like Joker's talking about like he didn't even get the satisfaction he thought he would.
That is one thing that Batman's not really well known for, is sense of humor.
Yeah, but he has it right there.
Yeah.
And like it's kind of I kind of like it because you think like Joker's like, "Oh, I finally wanted it." And Batman won't even kind of let him have his moment there at the end, which is just funny.
He doesn't get satisfaction.
And he's just like, it should have been. And you just get like a sad Joker, like upset that. Yeah. Then we get Batman, who's very much drawn like Burt Ward from the
Robin.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I said Batman. Robin, who's very much drawn like Burt Ward from
Bad boy.
the 60s TV show. And he talks about how like Batman did the impossible. And he goes, I guess that's what heroes do. He talks about how like he was his hero from when he was a kid. You know, he rescued, me from my parents. He was kind. He was good. He was brilliant. He goes, he was not a funny guy, though. He let me do all the jokes, is what he says. But everything else, he was everything else. I really like this. He goes, and he did the impossible. And then it says holy, like he's going to do like a holy folding lawn chairs or some kind of like thing. But he stops himself and he goes, and like gets back into the character, which was kind of a cool little moment. Right. And he just talks about how like, Batman was holy, how he never gave up no matter what. And over again, he'd pull off miracles. And he goes, and finally he died for us. So I learned to do the impossible as well. And I carried on. Then we get one.
Do we know why Robin is called Robin?
I'm sure there's some reason why. I don't know right off the top of my head. I'm just nerdy enough to be dangerous, Mike.
Well, I'm saying I just started looking up the bird Robin to see.
The color scheme
I guess it's kind of close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a weird way.
Bats and robins don't really hang out together, though.
They both eat fruit. I don't know.
There you go.
The Clayface panel gets me. It's just 3 panels, but it's just really, I don't know. He just says he died saving the city. No, that's not true. He saved the city, yes, but he died saving me. And Clayface just goes, I said I'm not worth it. And he said everyone's worth it.
Yeah.
Then we get Harvey Bullock, who's kind of sitting there standing in front of the casket. And he's telling the story of like how, and then the floodwater kind of came through like a battering ram and it washed him away. And he's like talking about like he came through and he like threw the baby to me and I caught her before the water took him away.
The baby.
Yeah, the baby. And he goes, I made it out of there carrying that baby. And he goes, and the people asked me like, how could you keep going? And he goes, I said that because he kept going. So it's a lot of people like just talking about the determination all about Batman.
Sure. By the way, it says in some cultures that robins symbolize rebirth.
Oh, okay.
So
well, then that's probably
that has a lot to do with
that
it right there.
For sure. Just like bats coming out of the dark.
Yeah, sure.
Then we have
they're almost kind of the opposite.
They are.
Know? Yeah.
And then we see the woman from again goes, well, have you figured it out? And Batman goes, not yet, as we see their shadows kind of standing over. Right. And Ra's al Ghul then tells the story.
Ra's al Ghul.
As he's up there and he goes, I said, you could join me. You could be immortal. Like I offered him the Lazarus pits. And he said, no. He walked away from me. He's like, and that was when I knew that I would have to kill him. He goes, and but first I wanted to disgrace him. I wanted to take everything that he had away from him. Yeah. We framed him for murders, for, multiple ones. We turned the whole city against him. We waited for him to despair. And he goes, it didn't happen. He kept going with it. He even figured out it was me. Like he kept fighting. And then he goes, the irony when he died from a scorpion sting in the night in the desert was not lost on the League of Assassins, which is a callback to a previous Batman and Ra's al Ghul story from a Neil Adams story from back in the, Then we have Superman shows up. And Superman tells him, like, I told him our job was to inspire them. He's talking about the villains. Superman goes, I told him it was our job to inspire like the villains to make them want to be better. And look at you. He goes, like, you're frightening them. Or where does he go? Sorry, I don't want to get this wrong. He goes, I told him our job is to inspire them to be better than they are so that they can be better than they are.
Yeah.
And look at you. You're frightening them. You're as bad as the worst of them. He said, no.
Superman's big old dude in this thing.
He is. He's very much not as the Superman we covered. It wasn't as big as this.
No, this is muscle bound.
It is. And Batman tells him, he's like, no, Clark. He goes, I stand between the worst of them and everybody else. He's like, while they're all worried about trying to go out and kill me, that means that that's innocents that are being like left alone. And he tells Superman, he's like, take me back to Gotham now. Because it shows them like out in an icy area.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that it seems like all the criminals have like threatened, because Superman says, they said if you'd come back to Gotham, they're going to kill you.
Right.
And that's where he's like, well, if they're trying to kill me, then that's innocence being unharmed.
Right. They're leaving everybody else
and
alone.
he goes, so Clark, take me back to Gotham now.
Mm-hmm.
And then Superman just kind of tells him, he smiled that scary smile. And he goes, and I took him back and I never saw him again.
Yeah.
So like everybody still just has a different story. And that's about the time we see Batman brings up a door behind the casket.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, it wasn't there before. And the woman goes, well, does it matter? And he goes, I think so. So they walk over to the door and we see like a ghostly hand kind of push it open.
A ghostly Batman hand.
Ghostly Batman hand and walk through. I really like the art there of like the dark with the ghostly kind of cape and cowl and the light with the woman there. It's just all very well done.
Yeah.
He's like, he goes, it's strange. I know that I'm Batman, but like, I don't remember what Batman I am really anymore. He's like, I don't remember if I'm the one that they've talked about or not. It doesn't matter though. And he goes, this is what your brain does when it's dying, isn't it? I think it's called like an NDE, a near death experience. He goes, it's classic, meets all the criteria. I feel serene, like calm, my life and replay kind of over in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, so I'm not dead. And the woman goes, no, not yet. And he goes, but I'm close too, aren't I? And she goes, yes, Bruce, I'm afraid so. You're very close. So the woman already knows who's Bruce.
Yeah.
And Bruce kind of looks at her with his like, squints his eyes and he goes, another thing that happens in near-death experience, you meet relatives, friends, ones who died before you did. And I know you, don't I, mother?
Yeah.
And it shows that it's him talking to his mom there then.
Yeah.
And she goes, yes, you do, Bruce. So he's like sitting there. So then like, is this real or is just something else that I'm just like, imagining before the end?
Right.
And she kind of tells him, well, is there really any difference at this point? And he's like, I guess not. It's just kind of subjective. She goes, exactly. So what have you learned from your funeral, Bruce? And he's like, learned? And she goes, yes, Bruce. Like, what did, not a lot of people get to attend their own funerals.
No.
Like, what did you learn from this? And then we get like a giant just splash page panel of a bunch of kind of action. And it's him. Yeah. And it's him just talking about kind of
big
things
Gotham
about
to one side, action to the other side.
And there's silhouettes of Batman.
Lots of Batman silhouettes. So kind of showing you battles throughout the years.
Exactly. And it's just like, I've learned that it doesn't matter what the story is. Like, some things never change. And he goes about like, Batman doesn't compromise. Like, I keep the city safe, even safer. Even if it's safer by just one person. It's like, I never give in. And so it's like him just talking about like everything that they've kind of gone through to express the aspects in him. It's him just repeating them kind of.
I bet that's kind of a reflection of like these DC meetings that they have. You can only do this much. You can do whatever you want with Batman, but it always has to go back to these like four or five things.
Exactly. Like there's, I think it's,
he doesn't kill. He doesn't this. He doesn't, that kind of thing.
We listened to when we talked about what's so funny about truth, justice, and the American way.
Yeah.
Like when Joe Kelly talked about killing in there, like he's like, I believe that. Like I believe that there's cores about Superman that exist as a character.
Sure.
One of them is like, he doesn't kill like on any like, and so I think that there is like that's the thing about these characters is it's different or it's weird to me. We talked about Alan Moore, and I listened to an Alan Moore interview plenty of times and just read things about just how awful it is for some of the creators of comic books and like the stories there.
Right.
Like obviously it's them writing for a character that they're not going to own any of this because DC owns Batman. They're just telling the stories of a character they don't own.
Sure.
But I still have to believe that even in that, the character means so much to so many people that they still have just the ability, the ability to be able to write for him and still have things that for everybody are the same across the board for Batman.
They have artistic license, I would imagine, but with the bumpers on. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. We get even more panels, and I can tell you, like, there's the panel of Bane breaking Batman's back from the 90s. The way the Joker is drawn here, that's from Grant Morrison's Arkham Asylum, A Serious Place on a Serious Earth from the late 80s. There's it's all just different things from Batman's past again. As he keeps going, like, everything changes, nothing stays the same. I don't ever give up. I can't give up.
The only thing I'm not crazy about is the fact that Batman has his shirt off, but his cowl's still on.
So that I told you about the Scorpion.
Yeah.
That is a issue that I'm pretty sure it's Neil Adams and who did it with? Why am I blanking on his name? I'm seeing his face. But where he fought Ra's al Ghul out like in the desert, and it's like he fought him shirtless with like a sword, and his cow's still on.
All right,
so I'm pretty sure like that's Talia. That's
so it's
his
a reference
daughter.
to that.
Yeah. But so he's like, and I get it. I mean, I really get it. The end of the story of Batman's is he's dead because in the end, Batman dies. What else am I going to do? Retire and play golf?
Yeah, sure.
He goes, it doesn't work that way. It can't. I fight until I drop, and one day I will drop. But until then, I fight. And so his mother's like, that's right, Bruce. Like, that's what you do. That's what you've always done until it's done. And then you die. And then when they can find a body, they put you in a coffin. Until then, you keep fighting because that's all you do. Like, He goes, she goes, I still remember you sitting on my lap and reading, like we did that a lot kind of. And it shows and goes back to a little image of like young Bruce sitting on Martha's lap, and they're reading it's called the Goodnight book, which is very much like Goodnight Moon.
Yeah,
you have kids, I'm sure. Yeah.
Sure.
And Thomas, his dad, is like, isn't he a little too old for reading that? And she's just like, but it makes him so happy. Who cares, Thomas? Yeah. And he's like, yeah, you're right. Go ahead, Bruce. Let me hear you kind of read some. And they, are sitting there kind of had some nice little moment between them. And then Batman goes, it starts in an alley with Joe Chill. And we go back to the bar now where we were. And it's an aging. We see the shadow of Batman and his mom over there. Yeah. And Joe Chill turns like he feels something.
Joe's old.
He is old now. He was young to begin the story. He's old now. And he goes, you there? Hey, is anybody there? Damn ghost. And he's just like kind of scared. Yeah. Then it shows them, it plays through the alley scene again as he sees it again.
Shooting, the pearls, the whole thing.
All of that. And he's there and, lean over and he goes, it's not a battle, it's a war and it never ends. And then his mom goes, it always ends, Bruce. It's ending now. And he goes, okay, this is my near-death experience. Am I going to like come around? Where am I going to wake up? Like a riverbank hospital bed? And she goes, I don't believe so, my darling. Not this time. And he goes, well, I don't like believe in an afterlife. So that, like, I don't believe there's a place that I go that's kind of like, or I'm good, or that for me being good when I'm done. Like, I've tried. I believe I can't. This is me. Like, that's all I have. Like, I just keep fighting. And then once that's it, like, that's it.
Right.
And his mom tells him, but I'm here, Bruce. Like, I've always been here, because he's like, I'm alone. Like, I'm always alone. And they're back. It's just the two of them now kind of standing over his casket. But as you can see, now it's kind of shifted and it's kind of ghostly.
It's like a ghostly Batman in the
casket, and he's real as he's standing over there.
Yeah.
And she goes, then are you ready to let go now, to move on? And he goes, to go to my final reward? Like I told you, Mom, I don't believe in. And she stops him. And she tells him, no. Like, you don't get heaven or hell. Do you know the only reward you get for being the Batman? You get to be the Batman. And she tells him that, like, and when you're a child, you get a handful of years of happiness, and then you lose the two of us, and then you spend your whole life doing this. Like, this is what happens. You want it to be the Batman, you're the Batman. That's all you get. It's cyclical like this. And then she just tells him to kind of let it go. And then he can't find her. And he's like, Mom, and she goes, remember the Goodnight book, Bruce? And he's like, yeah, I do. And she goes, well, then it's time to say goodnight. Say it. And it shows it kind of in the book form, and it's like Wayne Manor, and it says Goodnight House, and you see like little kid hands with the book. Good night, Batcave.
Well, it's Goodnight Moon.
Good night, Mechanical Dinosaur. Good night, Giant Penny. Right? And it's going through all of this,
Sure.
Good night, Batmobile. Good night, Alfred. Good night, Boy Wonder. Good night, Joker. Good night, all of you. Good night, Jim Gordon. Good night, Gotham City. And it's just a good night, bat signal. Goodbye, stars in the big sky. Good night, goodbye, goodbye. And it's like you see the bat signal kind of in this, like a sea of stars.
Mm-hmm.
And then as it sits there, the bat signal kind of morphs and it turns from the bat signal into like this weird little looking thing and then almost into hands, and the hands transform into hands holding up a new baby. And the baby is handed to a woman in the hospital bed, and it goes, Miss Wayne, it's a boy.
Oh, wow.
And she holds and she goes, hello, Bruce.
So this is like
Hello.
a reincarnation?
And that's how it ends.
Oh, wow.
Also, though, I will point out, just because we've been talking about Alex Ross with the art for Kingdom Come, he did a alternate cover for the first issue of this for Batman 686. This is what the cover did look like.
Oh, yeah.
Remember the Catwoman story, the Alfred story?
Yeah.
This is the Alex Ross cover.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Dude.
Yeah, that's a very good. That's like a painting. I mean, that is,
Well, all of his stuff is so good
it's
like
gorgeous.
that.
Yeah.
But so there you go. So that is Whatever Happened to the Caped Crusader by Neil Gaiman
There's
and
my
Andy
Batman.
Kubert. I like that. I like that
That's
he's
true,
waving.
a little cartoon Batman.
I like it. But there you go. So I just thought it was a really good kind of.
No, it's excellent.
It's a nice death story without, like, again.
Well, it's an alternate universe kind of thing, where you're assuming that Batman just gets to be Batman over and over and over and over, and it never changes for him.
Well, I think it just kind of says that no matter what happens, like that's like she says, like, your reward for being Batman is
that's
just
his
being
reward,
Batman.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
this is how it's going to end. Like, this is your choice. Like, you chose to do this, but this is the only way, the only outcome for this. And I think that it's just showing, like with all the stories, is like Batman, no matter what iteration of Batman it is, he always has the same characteristics. He always has the same, like, he's always out to protect the city. He's always out to fight to even save just one person. He never, like, those things stay the
like
same.
You say, he can't kill. He doesn't do this. He doesn't do that. It's just the core values of the character.
It all, like, everything stays the same. And, like, it doesn't matter what else changes, who gets him. It all ends the same too, is the point, kind of in a way. It could be the Joker who finally kills him. It could be Cat. Like, it doesn't matter. Everything stays the same. He would have been the whole way the same time. The story ends the same way. It's just cyclical for the Batman.
Yeah.
But I just think that it was just really good, and I love the cool little stories they told there.
No, I like the story. I think that it's kind of cool. It's not something that you could repeat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it is well told.
Yeah.
Gaiman is like I told you yesterday. I mean, he's one of those guys that, he could do whatever, and I'll watch it or I'll listen.
No,
to it
I've always loved his stuff.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed. Yeah, you would like to look at the
there's a lot of
Kubert
really cool
sketches in there, because they
drawings,
have like the rough sketches and the final pencils in there too. But so there you go. Whatever happened to the Caped Crusader? What we have to look forward to coming up next, though, I can tell you,
I'm excited about this.
Now that we've gotten done with Batman, is we can get looking forward to some of the other DCEU stuff. That main one being, we already kind of looked at a little bit out of it before when we talked about Kingdom Come, because James Gunn teased the Superman logo there too, but we're breaking down more of the DCEU, and I'm going to introduce Mike to a little character named Booster Gold next week.
Very nice.
And I can tell you, I focused on the 2007 Jeff Johns run. I knew a little bit about Booster Gold as a character, but after reading this, I have a newfound respect and just liking for the character. So
I know zero.
So, and I'm not going to tell you anything about it until we
good.
get there, so you can kind of like learn together. But so that's what we got coming up next.
Yeah.
As always, thank you guys for taking the time out to listen. Make sure to check out the Rogue Media Network family of podcasts.
RogueMediaNetwork.com.
And as always, we appreciate you taking the time out to listen. And until next time, stay safe, everybody.
Golly con.
Pros and heroes. Gonna tell you about pros and heroes. Gonna tell you about.
This has been a Rogue Media Network